Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with the Haydn Symphony Crusade, and I'm actually wearing the t-shirt that goes with the Haydn Symphony Crusade, which you can purchase in the ClassicsToday.com shop, and I know you're going to want to. Now, we are all the way up to number 48, the Maria Theresia, not to be confused with Maria Teresa. That little I makes all the difference. There are two different empresses. And, I don't particularly care which one is which, but this is a symphony that was allegedly written for a visit of the Queen to Esterhazy or something like that. And naturally, it's not the one that they played when she came. And it's nice that it has a nickname. It makes life easier. Now, this symphony is a little complicated because there are optional parts for trumpets and timpani, which some regard as inauthentic, and so some performances leave them out. And I can kind of understand that because the horn parts, they're in high C and C alto. They are so thrilling. But Haydn's C alto symphonies usually were accompanied by trumpets and drums, and so, there's an argument both ways. I really think it depends on the performance. As long as they leave out that damn harpsichord continuo, I'm happy. I would be perfectly fine. And in this particular performance by Barry Wordsworth and the Capella Istropolitanica, or whatever the hell they're called, the Istropolitana. It's the Encyclopedia Istropolitanica, right? Never mind. On Naxos, I am okay. Now, this symphony occurs during Haydn's Sturm und Drang period, the storm and stress period, full of tormented minor key music and gouts of passion just erupting everywhere. But we need to understand something, that the Sturm and Drang period was a period of heightened expressivity in all directions and heightened musical means in all directions. And this symphony really illustrates that in a very, 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 very interesting way. And it's one that's purely musical. I mean, it has no, extra sort of emotional, expressive, other kind of significance. It's a musical quality that I'm going to ask you to pay attention to when we listen to these examples. That musical quality is melodic extension. It's making tunes seem much longer than they really are by adding phrases of interesting length to the main melodic material. And Haydn does it in every single movement here. All of the melodies, the main melodies in this symphony have this, or main sections or ideas, have this quality in common. They are extended. And the reason Haydn is doing this is really very, very, very interesting. It's marvelous. He's doing it because Haydn is generally working on a small scale. He's a very compact composer, but he wants to sound big. So one way to sound big is to do interesting things with the shape and structure and length of your tunes so that people don't get into a rut in terms of squarely phrased, predictable melodies. Nothing in this symphony is predictable. I mean, nothing. And that's what makes it so fascinating. And that's what makes it a real Sturm und Drang work. It's a work that expands the musical technique that Haydn had at his disposal and enlarges his vision and the repertoire of things available that he could use. And after this, the horse was out of the barn gate. He was able to do this regularly, but perhaps not quite to such an extreme and focused and concentrated way as he does in this particular symphony. I mean, it really is just an extraordinary work. First of all, the opening. The opening is so arresting, with the horns going da pa 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 ba da 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 pa 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 pa. Those high horns. It's an amazing sound, full of tension because of the pitch, because it's so high and difficult. But here's the cool thing. What you'll hear when you listen to the exposition, which I'm going to play you in a moment, is that the tune just sort of seems to wander away. And it keeps wandering away. It goes further than you think it should wander. Then it stops dead, and then the symphony starts all over again. And now we go to the motion music that leads us on to the second subject. So we have a double, what they call a counter statement in the music biz of the first subject. And that first statement of it is almost an introduction. It's so peculiar. And it really sets out the roadmap for what Haydn's going to do throughout the work. And that's, one of the things that's very typical of Haydn, because the whole symphony is united by this overall concept, this idea of melodic extensions, of stretching things out to make them sound bigger and more unpredictable, and therefore giving the symphony more bang for your buck. It packs more stuff into every second of playing time. So the whole symphony doesn't have to be very long to sound very, very grand and big and expansive, like it's in no rush to get over with anything, even though it may be flying along. So I'm going to play you the whole exposition. And I want you to pay attention, first of all, to that first subject with its wandering little thing, and then the second subject when it finally arrives. This exposition is full of ideas. I mean, it's almost stupid to think of first idea, second idea, first subject, second subject, because there are so many intervening events, and the extensions of all of these themes create their own new ideas. It's just chock full of goodies. I mean, really, it's a grab bag of wonderful, wonderful stuff. But it's important to know where the formal second subject is, because it's a tune. You have that initial tune, and the second subject is those are the real melodies. All the other stuff is busyness of various kinds. It's repeated patterns and rhythmic shapes and stuff like that. So Haydn's very clear. He wants you to know what the distinctive tunes are. And I'll indicate the second subject as well when we get to it. So you'll pay attention to that too. Here is the exposition of the Theresia Symphony, number 48. See what I mean by a grab bag of good stuff? And I mean, the opening subject is immediately, instantly memorizable. And the second subject is soft and lyrical and lovely. But here's the thing that's fascinating. When we get to the development section, Haydn doesn't use either of them at all. The material for the development is either that wandery stuff, just sort of, moseying along that we heard first. It sounded like it was completely distracted. And the motion music, all of that other stuff, those other arresting motives and things that were not technically the tunes. That's what the development has. And I'm going to play the development section. It's amazing. You might not even think it came from the same symphony because it has none of the themes that Haydn wanted you to get into your head. And it's wonderfully surprising and constantly renewing itself because you just don't know what's going to come next. And you realize, it was part of that. But then when he finally gets to the recapitulation and the opening tune comes back, it's like, oh, yeah, we're back. We're really, really back. And again, this is a way to make the movement sound big, to sound rich, to sound abundant and diverse, while really keeping things to very, very modest proportions. It's just like unbelievably crazy genius. That's Haydn. So here's the development section, just the development section. You see what I mean? That's just so cool, isn't it? It really is. As you listen to these symphonies, if you've been following this crusade, this whole section of talks, the wonderful thing about these symphonies is that they really educate us while entertaining us. It's edutainment in the language of music, the things that music can do that no other art does, because Haydn does all of them, and he does them systematically from one work to the next, and then he combines them synthetically after he picks up something new, and then it becomes part of his overall language. And so there really is this cumulative knowledge. Now, the slow movement is an Adagio. It's in perfect sonata form, but you'd never know it. Why would you never know it? Because what passes for the second subject sort of part thing is it's extraordinary. Let me just describe it to you. Then we're going to play the exposition, which is over three minutes long. I mean, it's 3.5 minutes. It's huge, absolutely huge. And if you take the repeats, it's a big, long movement. The first idea, the first phrase, it's best not to think of first and second subjects. Just think of paragraphs. The first paragraph is 30 seconds long, and it's a dialogue between the violins and the oboes. The violins are muted. It's very beautiful. It's romantic music. It's very romantic music. It's a lovely, lovely dialogue, and it comes to a stop. Then the horns come in with the second part, let's call it, of the exposition. This is one continuous melody, 3 minutes long. Now, you might say, what's that? That is a big deal. 3 minutes is a whopping amount of time. And you will not find anything in the Romantic period by Mahler or Bruckner or Beethoven or Brahms that's a 3-minute melody that has no formal close. I mean, it just keeps going. It just keeps going and going and going. It's unbelievable how Haydn spins out this melody over this extraordinary span of time. I mean, it makes the music sound absolutely cosmically vast. And then having done that, I mean, you could repeat the whole thing. If you don't, you go on. It acquires rather more normal and rational proportions, because his job then is to bring it all home in a shapely and well-rounded way. And he does that. And you can listen to the whole movement to hear how he does it, because you know that the recapitulation is going to be enormously foreshortened as a result of this just extraordinary expansion of musical language. I mean, that's what it is. I mean, Haydn finally discovered he's living in a Germanic country, and he can write sentences that have 75,000 subordinate clauses with all the verbs at the end. I mean, that's the kind of writing it is. It's amazing. Just amazing. So let's listen to the first 3.5 minutes or so of the Adagio, of which just listen to the part when the solo horns come in. The other thing to note, by the way, before I play this, is just that Haydn's use of woodwinds in slow movements, now remember they used to be all just muted strings and nothing else, has become completely free and undogmatic, and the wind parts in this symphony are particularly gorgeous. And those horn solos, ooh, baby. So listen to this. Isn't that extraordinary? It's all done. We tend to ignore slow movements, quiet music. It's supposed to be gently expressive, pathetic, or whatever. It's not supposed to be like revolutionary. But that is amazing. That is just astonishing compositional verve in that movement. Now, the minuet does exactly what that first movement did, that opening of the first movement. It extends. It keeps extending. The minuet proper has a coda to the minuet. It's the part that starts ba-da-da-dum, ba-da-da-dum, ba-da-da-dum. You'll hear the fanfare element toward the end, which has nothing to do with the rest of the minuet, it seems, but it extends the length of the minuet. And just when you think it's over loudly, it ends quietly. There's always another phrase to be tacked on to the music. So here is the minuet. See what I mean? You hear that, right? The fact that it just kind of keeps extending itself a little more, like it doesn't want to go away. It's having such a good time. But finally, it gently goes to sleep. The middle section, the trio, as it's called, is a minor key Hungarian exotic excursion. It's really nifty. But it does the same thing. You hear it again. The second half of that tune wanders off into places in the final frontier, exploring strange new worlds, to seek out new life and new civilizations, to boldly go where no composer had gone before. That's what it does. You have no idea when it's going to end, and when it does, it's very sudden. It's like, oh, okay, that's it. And then the minuet comes back. But here is the trio without repeats, as always with these things, so we can hear the whole thing. Here you go. Amazing. The more I listen to this music, the more astounded I am. It never gets old. It really doesn't. You just hear more and more subtleties and fascinating things in it. Finally, last but certainly not least, we get a very peppy finale. A wild finale with a tune that's, it's a tune lit. Da dum ba ba da da dum ba dum ba ba da da dum. That's really the only idea in it. All the rest of it is fireworks. It's just the strings, the scales are going up, and the fireworks are going off, and Roman candles are shooting, and it's just marvelous. But it's very peppy. If you play it with repeats, it would be about 4.5 minutes long, maybe 5. But once through, as we're going to hear it, it's about 2.5 minutes. And how does Haydn achieve bigness in such a peppy, brief piece? Well, he does it a couple of ways. First of all, as with everything else in this symphony, that exposition has some extra endings that extend it a little bit. You'll hear that. It's jump button, jump, bum, 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 bum. It does that. What you might think is the romantic wind-up business. Like at the end of Beethoven's Fifth, where it has the coda that just won't quit. It just keeps going and going. Haydn does that a little bit. A little bit. He's not at that level of insanity, but he's getting there. And that's the point. So that's one way it gets a little bigger. The other way it gets a little bigger is through simple repetition. What happens is every time that opening idea comes back, and this is especially audible without repeats, it goes somewhere else. So you're never quite sure whether you're back home or not until we get to the ending. And so in this particular example, when you hear the whole finale without repeats, you'll hear that opening with the fireworks and da-dum-ba-ba-da-da-da-dum. You'll hear that business going off 3 times. The beginning, the middle, and the end. And each time the continuation is completely different. So the recap, the part that's supposed to be the literal repetition of what we heard at the beginning, doesn't sound like that at all. In fact, it sounds like it's getting further away until Haydn wrenches it back home at the end for the rousing final bars. And so once again, this idea of expansion, of bigness in a very small space, the illusion of bigness is preserved throughout the whole symphony. And so here, my friends, is the entire finale. Hold on to your horses. And that, my friends, is how you write a huge, big, grand symphony in a little space. Relatively little space. I mean, comparatively small space. But it is. It's an amazing piece of music. Another testament to Haydn's genius and another aspect of this Sturm und Drang expansion of the means of musical construction, of form, of expression, of everything. All of the parameters are getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Isn't that great? So keep on listening, friends. Next, we get La Passione, the last Sturm und Drang minor key church sonata symphony with a slow opening movement. Oh my goodness, this is a whopper. Haydn really goes out with a bang when it comes to this particular formal strategy, and I look forward to describing it to you. Take care.